Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Microsoft Flight Simulator VR Cape to Cairo in a Cessna 152. So the rules for this challenge is going to be no GPS or live maps during flight, using only what they call steam gauges or old school navigation using VORs. No using points of interest or other player indicators. Found that player indicators can show me where an airport is, which is a bit cheating. Every day we'll be flying with live weather, but starting at around 8-ish in the morning, just to have like a realistic time frame. We will be using Little Nav Map. This is a very great tool made for Flight Simulator, used for flight planning. We'll be using this extensively to calculate our flight plans, and we'll be using the inbuilt extension for this, but we will not be showing our actual position or trail like you would on a GPS. It will act as a static map. Procedures, startup and all those things, ATC, we're not going to be sticklers about that. I'm not a pilot or a pilot in training. This is just a fun exercise. Another thing, we won't be using external camera while airborne or flying. You can't do that in real life, so we won't be doing it. We will be doing it when we're maybe on the airport, simulating being outside the airplane and maybe just showing the plane around. Alright, for those who don't know where Cape Town is the southernmost point of Africa, and Cairo is obviously in Egypt, here in the north. It's a famous route by lots of things, ships, etc. We will be flying here over a course of probably a lot of videos. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we make it, maybe we won't. I would like to plan some fun routes along the way, maybe Victoria Falls here in Zimbabwe, Zambia. Maybe if we can find where Kilimanjaro is somewhere, we can definitely have a look and do some sightseeing as well along the way. The plane we will be flying will not have any autopilot. It will not have any GPS. We will only be using these things called VORs. They're effectively radio stations that you can fly towards or from at a specific angle, or you can see which angle you are on flying towards them. I'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. Let's get started. So we're gonna start here at Cape Town International. We will for these videos I'm gonna keep them uncut, like raw videos, but I'll try and put timestamps in the description to make it easier if you don't want to see everything going on. Let's start from runway 10 and take off in a northerly direction. That's going to be our starting point. For the first flight, we're going to keep it relatively simple. We're going to fly all the way here to Langebaanweg, which is technically an Air Force base. So it's not very realistic in a way, but we're not going to care too much about that. Let's go to runway 02 right. That sounds reasonable. Then, to make it easier on ourselves and to explain a little how these VORs are going to work, we will be flying towards this VOR as a first point, and then use that to get, well, at that point we probably will find Langebaanweg already. So let's append this VOR to our flight plan. Append. Not to append. We want to add it. Append adds it to the end. We want to add it. Not position. VOR. There we go. So we're gonna fly straight towards this VOR. It's very much north, and this won't really be necessary. This is a very famous coastline, or I know it quite well, so I'm just gonna demonstrate all the specifics of using VORs. So let's get started. Let's put some of this into Flight Simulator. VR, whoops. For this, we will select Cape Town International as our departure, and also selected runway 10. And we will be going to Langebaanweg, which I guess we can just get from little nav map, but it's close enough. I won't be setting the VOR in Flight Simulator, even though I technically can for this flight plan, but I won't, because we won't be using any of this directly in the Flight Simulator itself. Alright, we'll just get started in the airplane, and then we'll switch back to little nav map to tune in our radios before we get going. Not very realistic, they won't let me spend
Cape
this
Town
amount
Tower
of time
Cessna
on the
42 ready for departure to the north
runway.
at runway 01.
So a VOR works by having a single frequency that you tune your nav radio into. So we're going to fly away from Cape Town, which is 115.7. So if we go to little to the game, 115.7. That's going to be the frequency of this VOR. If I switch this on, it will, you see something came up here, it activated. One other thing that I forgot to mention, this plane has, or the modded version of this plane has what's called a DME, which stands for Distance Measurement Equipment. If the VOR has DME capabilities, we will be able to use that for determining our range. So if you can see here, 1.1 miles from this VOR, because this VOR is somewhere at this airport, and we will be flying away from this VOR. Let's see if we can open this up in Sim so we don't have to switch every time. There we go. So we're gonna fly away from this VOR at around, technically it's not exactly this, because let's just go back to little nav map, do some a little bit more accurate measurements. Let's measure from VOR to Summersfield to this VOR. And we see that angle is 17 degrees magnetic. Now you would look at that and say, well, that can't be 70 degrees if north is there, and that makes no sense. Well, that's because compasses don't face to true north, they face to magnetic north, and there's a bit of a difference, but our planes use magnetic north, so it's useful for us to also use that. So we're going to fly at 17 degrees to this VOR, and from Cape Town, and we're going to fly to this one, which is 113.0 at also 17 degrees, obviously. Let's tune those two in so long. Alright. So we want to set this to 17 degrees. It's 10, that's 20, so 19, 18, 17. Okay, back. And then the one we're flying to, just saw it, but I forgot already, is this one, which is 113. So we can set that up so long in our standby frequency, 113.0. And well, that'll be useful for later on. And we know when we get to that point, we're going to fly away from it at an angle of 342. So we need to remember that, or I'll probably forget, so we can check it later again. So we're going to fly towards, sorry, we're going to fly away from Cape Town, 115.7 at 17 degrees, towards that one, and then let's tune in that one as well, this side. Now we're going to use that later, 113.0. See, I already forgot that angle. 342. So we're gonna fly. Okay, that's 340. Sorry, 339, 340, 341, 342. Gonna fly away from that. So we don't care about this one yet. That's only gonna be later. We can make it active so long, but we won't be picking up that VOR for a while. Technically, the runway itself has another VOR, but this is fairly close. We should be able to see the runway and get to it. Okay. Enough planning. I think that's enough. So, how a VOR works, let's get in the air and I'll show you. Basically, we've tuned it to 17 degrees. And it's showing us right now, we're very close to it, so it's going to be very sensitive for now. But it's showing us how far we are away from that 17 degree, what they call radials. So right now it's a little bit to the left of us, but once we're in the air, we'll see. Let's go. Throttle, flaps are, don't need flaps in this 152. Right rudder to counteract the engine torque. About 55, 60 there. That should be good enough. Didn't look. Right, that's not a good takeoff, but hopefully it'll get better along the way. As I said, I am very much not a pilot. So this is Cape Town, and that will be Table Mountain. Although with my level of detail, it's Table Mountain-ish.
Cessna 42, continue for north departure.
Alright, climbing a little.
Cape Town Tower Cessna 42, continue for north departure.
Building that speed up, so let's point the nose down a little more. Alright, so as we can see now, our needle has moved to showing from. We can see that heading, that line. We're basically flying the same heading there in the compass as that line, but that line is to the right of us. If we ever so slightly change our heading to, let's say, 30 degrees, especially while we're so close to it, it should move quite quickly. And as soon as we get into, that line gets into the middle, we know that we are on that radial, i.e. going away from that VOR at 17 degrees, which is what we want. So let's get to it. Yes, we're very close now. Slowly changing my angle back to that same 17 degrees. So the VOR does not show your actual heading. That's what the compass is there for. But it does show you your position in that radial, or on which radial you are. Technically, as I said, this VOR for Cape Town does have distance measurement equipment. So here we can see, just keep it steady. we're about 2.6 nautical miles away from the Cape Town DOR. We can use that to gauge roughly how long we need to still go. But it's technically not really necessary. In some cases we won't have that. I think especially once we get to the middle of some deserts or some places, that's where it's going to get a real challenge.
Leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
So,
Cape Town Tower Cessna 42
just wait
frequency
for the
change.
radio. Yeah. So
Cape
on our
Town,
left,
approach Cessna 42 is type Cessna 152 4 miles north of Cape Town, 2,200 feet. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
Cessna 42 Cape Town approach. Squawk 4354.
Squawk 4354 Cessna 42.
on the left there we see Robben Island.
Radar contact 5 miles
I'm just
north
going
of
to
Cape
speak
Town,
over
3,000
the
feet.
ATC for now.
Cleared through the Charlie airspace.
So Robben Island is the island where Nelson Mandela
Cleared through the
was
Charlie airspace,
imprisoned
Cessna
for,
42.
well, he was in prison total 27 years, but he spent the largest amount of that time, I think, on Robben Island. So, fun fact, I was recently in a group that 4 of us swam in a relay, just for fun, from Robben Island to the beach here. Looks very close, but it is quite far, and the water on this west coast is very, very cold. It was about 12 degrees Celsius on the day. Luckily we did have wetsuits. Alright. So I had this crazy idea to do this, to fly in VR in a very small plane, in VR virtual reality. For those who may not know what that is, basically a headset that allows me to see everything in this plane as if it were, well, very realistic. I wanted to do a fun challenge, not just using a little map with an icon on it and saying, you're here, fly there. We are going to figure out how we get from point A to point B using old school ways. Map radio, or maps with VORs, old radios, and basically trying to use our eyes and landmarks as well. We'll see how that goes. If I get lost, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Let's cross that bridge when we get there. It's not very obvious. I'm playing Microsoft Flight Simulator. I have a fairly decent computer to play it on. I did, unfortunately, when I built it a couple of years ago, I did not build it with virtual reality in mind. I didn't have a VR headset then, and the requirements for virtual reality, especially in a game like this, unfortunately, is very, very high. So I have an nVidia 3070, which with a lot of tweaking and softwares, I use a little app called Auto FPS that basically manages the level of detail of things on the ground and objects we see and the terrain, to automatically scale them up and down to try and get a relative decent performance, which I think is very smart, and for me an absolute necessity on this graphics card with the Quest 3, which is the virtual reality headset I'm using. And I must say, I would definitely love a better graphics card, but even this, being able to look around to see all of these gauges, the rudders, the yoke, it really feels like something else. It's very hard to explain. I don't think it truly comes out through the video, because the video obviously you'll just see one eye is recording, and you have to experience it to really to get an appreciation for it. Here in Cape Town, as you can see, there's a lot of farmland. Most of, well, technically more there towards the mountains and the Cape Winelands, although this is also, I guess, considered part of the winelands, although there will be other things planted here as well. Cape Town is known for producing a lot of good wine across the world, or that get exported across the world. So I'm assuming a lot of this farmland is grapes or vineyards. I think that little airfield we are passing as our waypoint is probably used as some sort of crop dusting or pesticide plane, little airstrip. We won't be landing there. We're going to the bigger Air Force base, which I think if this were in real life and I would just randomly go land there, I don't think anyone will see me again. So do not try that in real life. Obviously, as I said before, I am not a real pilot or even a pilot in training, so everything I do or say is just for entertainment purposes. Don't ever take any of this as flight advice. What I can see here, we're drifting a little. It's probably my fault. You can see that line went to the left, which means the direction we want to be on is to the left of us. So I'm just going to turn a little bit more with the north heading until we intercept that line again. Notice now that while we're further away, that line should move a little bit slower than it did before. I'm also going to start looking at, not an expert on any of this, but I know we're about 5,000 feet in the air now, which is relatively high for the small plane. So that means we can lean out our mixture. The mixture is, to my basic understanding, there's less air here up in the sky. So if we have less air, but we keep on using the same amount of fuel, we're having too much fuel in the engine, so we can reduce the amount of fuel we put in. Let's keep to the left. I think there's it's a little bit more involved than that. I think there are some temps and things you technically need to care about. I'm not that proficient to care about that, so we'll just sort of wing it. Fun. Things you never want to hear your pilot say. So I'm flying alone, no co-pilot today. Here, one interesting thing on the ground, I think, if I'm not mistaken, right about there, that little outcrop is South Africa's only nuclear power plant. And I believe, although I'll have to fact check myself, but I believe it's the only nuclear power plant in Africa. So yeah, and it's right here on the west coast where the water is nice and cold, cool it down, and provides decent amount of
Cessna
power.
42 contact Cape Town Center on 124.7. Good day.
Right, so you see that line drifting to
124.7
the
Cessna
right
42.
again because our heading
Goodbye.
wasn't exactly 17.
Cape
Wind
Town
also has
Center,
an effect
Cessna
on that.
42, 5,900 feet.
Alrighty.
Cessna 42 Cape Town, Center
This should be good enough.
QNH30.36 radar contact. Continue.
Let's just have a look at our map. Since we have that distance being roughly 20 nautical miles from Cape Town, we can sort of just calculate or remind ourselves how long this distance is. Little nav map will just not. It's a little annoying. 44 nautical miles to that waypoint, so we're close to halfway there. The reason I say it's not exactly that distance is because how DMEs work is they send out a little signal, that signal gets sent back, and that gives you the absolute distance, but think of that as a direct line between that point and the airplane. But if we think of how we think of distances, we typically think of the distance on the ground. So that's a triangle that you need to calculate using our good old friend Pythagoras to say, well, we know that that distance we get there is the hypotenuse, or the long angle of the triangle, and we want the adjacent side. So using basic arithmetic we can calculate that, but if you're relatively close to the ground, and for our purposes we're not doing time turns or anything, it's just a ballpark number right now. But if you wanted to know your exact distance, you'll need to use our current altitude as well as the altitude of the VOR and do some maths. Let the co-pilot do some maths, but we don't have one. I am flying with AI traffic turned off. Specifically, I do have live traffic, so if we see any planes whatsoever, we know that it's a real person. But as I said in my little document, when I experimented with this a bit, I found that having the nameplates, those things that basically show the player's name and a little point exactly where they are, it gave away too much, especially airports. So if I were like now trying to navigate using this equipment and just using my eyes, it's a bit like people tend to congregate at or around airports, so then I can just see a bunch of people and fly there, which I want to challenge myself a little bit more, so nothing of those sorts. And for that same reason, we won't be using the external camera, because in a real plane, if you need to look behind you, you need to do this, like I'm physically turning my head, and you can't really see that like behind or below, directly below you, so wanted to mimic that as realistically as possible. Another thing, I unfortunately don't have a full yoke and rudder system like this plane has. I'm just using Logitech Extreme3D Pro, it's a entry-level joystick that allows me to do pretty much everything, but it's not exactly realistic because of those. If you look at those rudder pedals, I'll try and not sway the plane too much, but they control the rudder, and I think the brakes as well when you're on the ground. We don't have those, but maybe one day we can level up. But the joystick has it swivels to simulate that, so it's fine. I have a manual little throttle where I can control. So all in all, a decent experience. But I think obviously if you ever want to use this home simulator system for training or exercise, I don't think it's officially certified to count as training, but I think it's good enough for many pilots to train on. I think at least a yoke and rudders are, I would say, a much better option than a joystick. I think especially on a little plane like this that have these they have, I think it's called Vernier style throttle and mixture, so a little push-pull thing. And I do have a 3D printer. I might consider building me a set of at least throttle and mixture, maybe a flap lever, just for that more physical, tactile experience. But for our challenge right now, I mean, if I can ever justify spending a little bit of money on this, a little yoke and rudder system, they usually come with a throttle quadrant as well. We might look into that, but for now, the little joystick does just fine. Way better than like a keyboard and mouse or anything like that. But if we look at our distance on this maiden voyage, we see we're about 30 nautical miles, so another 14-ish to go. If we didn't have our DME, we would just fly straight towards this VOR, and once we get to it, it will get very sensitive. The line might move to the left or to the right. That little triangle that's currently saying from will disappear for a while. That's a good indicator that we are most likely just overhead of that VOR, and then when we continue flying, the triangle will flip around, facing forward, saying we are going to, I'm not flying, messing that up. We're currently flying from Cape Town, so if I switch it around, there we go. Now we're flying to it. That one shows we're a bit off course. It's fine. Correction. So the triangle is currently saying 2. As soon as we get onto it, it'll go off and then say from, because then we've directly over it. At that point, we're going to start using the bottom one to fly away from it at 3 4 something degrees, and that should take us directly to Langebaanweg, the airport we're going to today. The only thing is the one we're flying towards now, it does not have a DME radio, so we don't know a distance, but we can quickly just have a look at Cape Town again. About 34 nautical miles. Good. Let's use our DME as a way to show us exactly when we fly over it, because we will need to use that going forward a lot. I think, as I said, our DMEs and our VRRs are going to get very sparse in the future, I think. So start start getting comfortable using them as our primary method of navigation. I think I see the little airstrip there in front. Remember, the VOR isn't necessarily on the runway. Maybe just, I think if we look at the map, we can see exactly roughly where it is. Let's pretend we couldn't see it. Just keep using the VOR. I think it's a little bit more cloudy. Very close to it, so it should be very sensitive now. Like move very quickly if we veer off course. I'm gonna start slowly bring my altitude down. We're at 6,000 feet. Just gently curve down. So just to again test what I said, as soon as that triangle goes off, we know that we're on top of the VOR, and then we shall bank to the left to around 3-4 something degrees. It's already programmed into our course direction indicator, CDI, I think. So that's good. The runway we're going towards is somewhere along there. This first flight is more of a test, because I have flown this route before, so it's not completely new grounds. And I do know this area a little bit. For example, there's a lagoon there called the Langebaanweg lagoon. Right, so just gonna keep my heading because I see the needle moving quickly, and we should see it disappear. Very least, if it doesn't disappear, it should go from to from. Goes a little bit to the left, just to the right, just to keep it as centered as I can. Starting to doubt myself, but I think there we go. The Cessna 152 is not exactly known for its speed, I think, which is part of why I chose it as a bit of a exercise in a ridiculous fashion, just to fly with a very small plane at a great distance. Right, that little airfield should have been case. Still showing 2, which makes me worry a bit. I think I just need to if it moves this fast, we have to be very close, or I need to be going at a very fast speed, and we know we're not going at a very fast speed. Yeah, look, it's going all the way to the side. There we go. It turned off, which means we're right onto it. Can start so long my heading to 3-4 something. We'll have a look at my map, or at least the notes I made. Let's we'll need to get onto that radial. Let's do 330. And now we're looking at the bottom one. No longer care about overcorrected little 42 or something. Top one is no longer relevant, it's only the bottom one. We could tune in the top one. Might do it as soon as we leveled out a little. Just take a look at our flight plan.
Cessna 42, you're leaving my airspace radar service. Terminated squawk 7000. Frequency change approved.
Now there's a VOR here that
Squawk
does have
7000.
distance measurement equipment
Frequency change
at
approved Cessna 42.
117. So let's go there.
Approach Cessna 42 is type Cessna 152
Sierra.
3 miles northwest of Foxtrot Alpha Lima Sierra 5,800 feet. Request flight following.
And what's nice about this
Cessna
one
42 approach. Squawk 4204.
is it does have distance measurement equipment, so we know how far we are
Squawk
away from this airport.
4204, Cessna 42.
So we just got to this point,
Cessna
and
42
we're back
radar
to the
contact
left.
4 miles northwest of
Now we're
Foxtrot
on
Alpha Lima
this
Sierra
final line directly
6,200
to the
feet.
airport. So what I think we'll do is we'll
30
fly over it, make a little
Roger,
turn around,
Cessna
not that
42.
big turn, but a little turn around. We're gonna land at, if you look at our flight plan, land on runway, why does it not show me my runway? I think I said 0 to right. And an interesting thing about runways, which is quite smart, is the runway number corresponds to the magnetic compass direction. So if you need to go to runway 02, you can look at your compass, make the compass say 20 degrees, and that should be the exact heading of your runway. They use magnetic. Half my line. They use magnetic because that's what you're using in the compass, and the magnetic difference between true north differs from place to place quite a lot, actually. It's always good to use the true magnetic. The magnetic north and not true north when flying with a compass. Yes, I veered a little off there to the left, slowly going to the right. We can turn back to the left.
Approach Cessna 42. Request clearance to transition Charlie airspace.
Cessna 42 approach. Cleared through the Charlie airspace.
Cleared through Charlie airspace, Cessna 42.
Right, so we're about 15 miles away from our first airport that we're going to land at. Here on the left we see the beautiful Langebaanweg. It's a very nice town. The water is also very cold, but it's a nice holiday place as well. A lot of people come here on holiday. Okay, let's bring our altitude down a little. go down nose dive, you'll see the speed goes up a little. We just need to be careful about that. We don't go so fast as to damage the plane over speed. Right now, as soon as we gain speed, the plane just wants to go back into the air. So let's balance it out a little by just focusing on that little meter there, which tells us our vertical speed. If the needle's down, that means we're going down at currently, let's say, 800 feet per minute. Bring down the throttle a little bit. Don't want to go too much into that yellow speed. Currently have a direct identification of the runway. We're still 10 miles out. I do see something that looks like a runway, but it can be a bit deceiving here. So we have a lot of straight lines with farm roads and things, so we're still far enough. It's fine. As I said, we can just do a flyby, get our bearings from the south to runway 02, or if we get a good visual right now, we might go straight in. We'll see. I have made grave mistake. Someone probably saw a long time ago. That's why I'm not seeing the runway. I tuned the bottom radio in just for distance, but I did not tune that. I'm not using it as a navigation. I'm using the top one. That's why that top needle is very far to the left, so we're making a little bit of a turn. Wondering about that for a while, since I expected to see the runway on a straight line. Let's do that. So let's tune in 113. No, what am I saying? 117. Let's not. Confusing myself right now. Let's have a look at what we land here. We should be going to 117. This is completely wrong, but I do see the runway. Okay, good lesson. Don't be too smart with the DME, and I tuned the DME for our distance, and I tuned the bottom one that's going away from, so I should have been on that, should have focused on that one, which I think I did. Yeah, I confused myself. Well, anyway, this is going to be part of the challenge going forward. I don't have, it'd be nice to have an actual marker or something that I can use. But worked out this time. We need to be more vigilant next time. So I'm way too high directly go into this runway. What I'll do is, we know we want to land on runway 02, so we'll bank to the left until that little marker on the right is at 20 degrees, which will mean we're going 90 degrees. Not yet, almost 20-ish. There we go. So now we're perpendicular to the runway. Our altitude is 3,000 feet. We're 3 miles away from the VOR. It's not necessarily the airstrip or the runway. We're gonna gently make a little circle here. And get in line to runway.
Tower Cessna 425 miles south, 2,700 feet to land.
Cessna 42 Tower. QNH tree 0.3 wind 225 at 7. Fly straight in runway 02 right.
Slowly lose some altitude.
Make straight in runway 02 right, Cessna 42.
Technically, I'm just pressing a button now. There we go. That set our altimeter to what the radio, the ATC just told us for the pressure. It's a bit more accurate. I'm going to assume that the runway is at near sea level. That's fine. Okay, just turning all the way around. A little bit sharp probably. I'm going to lose some altitude during this.
Cessna 42 wind 225 at 7. Clear to land runway 02 right.
Clear to land runway 02 right, Cessna 42.
That's not the cleanest way to get into a runway, and I think I'm still way too high, so I'm gonna cut the throttle a little bit. Ever so slightly. Not too much. Point the nose up so I lose some speed. Even though I'm just pointing the nose up, we're still losing altitude. And now we're in glide, we're in the phase where I can start using my flaps. So let's use first level of flaps. Should bring us slower, but we're still way too high. We see 4 lights next to the runway. They're both white at the moment. We need them. Let's do second level of flaps. We need 2 red, 2 white. Right now we're seeing 4 white, which means we're too high. But this is a very long runway, so let's use some more power. There we go. One is red now. I feel a strong crosswind. A little high. There we go. 2 red. Keep this going. A very strong crosswind though. Wow. If those trees were real, they would be shaking right now. Slowly coming off the throttle. Slowly. Slowly. Throttle flaring a little too early. Keeping it straightish. Alright. The cleanest landing, but let's hope there's plenty more that are a little bit more smooth. Flaps back up. Okay.
Cessna 42, turn next taxiway.
First leg of our very long trip done. We're not gonna go all the way to the taxi spaces or parking area. I think it'll be at least courteous to get off the runway. So let's at least get off, switch the engine off, and we'll call it a day. If there are any suggestions, things that you think may make this challenge a little bit more interesting, please let me know in the comments.
Cessna 42, exit runway when able.
Yeah, I'm just doing this for fun, so I'm not sure when, like how often I'll be able to make videos.
Contact ground on 121.75.
But yeah, any suggestions? Tell me what you liked, tell me what you didn't like, and I'll see if I can work on that. Let's quickly turn this off. Throttle all the way off. Here we go. First flight, FACT, Foxtrot Alpha, Charlie Tango to Foxtrot Alpha, Lima Whiskey. Again, don't fly there in real life unless you are in the Air Force. Alright, thank you very much.